5:05. I think it's time to call the meeting to order. Thank you for your patience, everybody. We're trying to get established in the Zoom world here. So, Mr. Secretary, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Jeff Romine.
Here.
Doug Hubble.
Here.
Doug Snook.
Here.
Paul Miller.
Here.
Neil Carlson is absent, so we do have a quorum.
Okay, so the first agenda item is review of the meeting notes from, let me find the agenda here. Place the agenda. That would be from February 19th. So the meeting notes were issued by the secretary, Dave. I went through and made some edits that you guys have in front of you. The content of what he had was pretty accurate. I just put the details that Tim Deeker included for the configuration of the water system, the fire system, backflow prevention, and connections. And then added some comments about the discussion we had afterward about this excavation and utilities. And give you guys some time to look at that.
Do we know anything about the Hills project? Has it been separated yet?
I don't know, but Kenny's up there on his project, I believe. Kenny, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear the question? Has the Hills, has that been separated yet?
No, sir, it has not.
It has not?
Are they doing their testing and getting the,
They haven't been, no. I haven't seen any reports of it, so I can't say that they have or they haven't. They wanted a CO to finish the project, and I won't give it to them because they're still tied together.
are they not supposed to provide monthly test reports of the water samples?
If I remember right, they were supposed to.
I recall they were supposed to do it. I don't know if they had to submit it.
Yeah, I don't think we
didn't ask for them to, okay.
No.
But we could, and we can.
Well, so I mean, since it hasn't happened yet, and it's been a year, basically.
I think there has to be reevaluation of making sure that there's some kind of adequate testing since nothing has happened.
I agree.
Let's do this first. Let's review the meeting notes, and if you guys agree with them, then we can add that to another discussion item.
Okay. I move that we approve the minutes from February 20th, 2020.
With my edits.
With your edits.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's 5 of us. Aye. Okay, Okay, so the first item in new business is Appeal 20200002P. Is Rick on here?
I'm representing Rick today.
Oh, okay. So you have made an appeal for a variance per section 901 and 902 of the plumbing code. Can you fill us in on what's going on?
Yeah, we are doing trying to do a historic remodel in Westboro, and there's existing plaster. I'd rather not get into. I'd rather preserve it. And so we'd like to use an air admitted valve for that. And then also we have an island sink we'd like to use this valve for.
I didn't pick all that up very clearly.
Sorry. Which part did you not get?
Most of it.
Okay. Sorry. It's a remodel in Westboro. We're adding a powder bathroom and trying to not disturb the lath and plaster.
Okay. And this is on the basement level, upper level,
This is on the first floor.
first floor.
And it's towards the front of the home. And so to have that in that front elevation, vent pipe would be not great. And it's a very large home.
Okay. All right, thank you. So from the city, who wrote the violation and what's the city's perspective?
There was no violation written.
Okay.
They came to us.
Oh, okay.
I believe the job hasn't started, is that correct, Summer?
We're just demoing right now.
So they're ahead of it.
Okay. And you guys have looked at it, considered it, and your thoughts are?
Jason is the one that has had the conversations, and unfortunately he's unavailable.
Is there a second story above?
There is.
Okay. And no bathroom immediately adjacent to, around, that they can get tied into a vent?
Correct.
So obviously it's not an approved device per the adopted plumbing code or building regulations. There have been times in the past with historic buildings that we have allowed it here and there. Does the city have a position that they recommend we allow it or not?
I'm not in support of it.
You're not in support of it
No.
because there is a way that they can physically do it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts? I'm Summer, I apologize. I don't have enough really information other than it's going to be difficult and we'd rather not do it.
Well, it's almost nearly impossible. The toilet is at least 18 inches off that outside wall because of the rock foundation below it. And so I really don't have a wall behind it. It's a knee wall at 48 inches. And Kyle, you can speak up if you feel like there's another way.
No, the only way is going to be to like tear all the plaster out and then possibly jackhammer the foundation to get it back into the wall.
Yeah.
So this is on the basement level with the foundation or the first floor above the
It's
foundation?
on the first floor, but it's pushed to the exterior wall. And so it's like sitting, I'm trying not to sit it on top of the exterior or the foundation wall.
Okay. Do you guys have any
Is
thoughts?
there a way to fur the wall? I know.
Well, that's what I've done. I've furred it to get it away from that, so we have clearance underneath, which creates a 12-inch deep shelf behind the toilet.
And so continuing with that same furring or even something to conceal the vent pipe to above the ceiling is not an option.
Right, because we're trying not to tear into any of the second-story walls that stack on top of that room. as far as like the lap and plaster goes.
Kind of one of those things without seeing it.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
it's really-
Well, I tried to get some pictures yesterday. I don't know if you'll be able to tell what I'm talking about.
This is for a sink or a toilet?
Be for both, wasn't it?
It's
This
just
is-
toilet. Oh yeah, we need it for both, I guess.
Lavatory drain, the vent for the toilet.
Yeah, and you can't island vent a toilet, so.
Right. That's my deal. I would be a little less apprehensive if it was just a sink.
If it was just a sink, I was gonna say. you-
Island sink or something where you don't have access below. But venting a stool on it, I don't think is in the best interest.
He's saying something. Bill's
Okay.
trying.
Bill,
I
are you
think you're
trying to
muted.
speak?
Oh, somebody's
Oh, she's sharing her
something.
screen, all right.
Can you see any of that?
Yeah,
You can.
yes.
Okay. I mean, you're there. And there's just the stacked plaster crown above this, and then like all sorts of stuff happening. I was trying to just keep it intact.
So that's where the stool's gonna be sitting,
Yeah,
is the lavatory would be on our right from there?
it would be like standing looking this would be behind you, directly behind you.
So they're facing each other.
Oh, it's like a narrow.
Because if that's your stool, well, technically the vent for your stool in the lavatory would be on the opposite wall, right?
Correct.
So you're wanting to do this for both the toilet and the lavatory?
Yes.
What is directly above, like bedrooms or?
It's a bedroom.
Is the closet above you or is it open bedroom?
It's right in the middle of the bedroom. Or, you know, like there's no closet or anything.
Just without seeing it, I really don't.
Yeah, it's really hard to make a decision. I mean,
It was looked at this from a professional standpoint.
Would someone like to meet on the site and look at it?
Yeah, like what professional opinions have been there, like as far as contractors, anybody?
Who are the contractors you've had take a look at it and provide you options?
Kyle is on the call today.
Well, I think I hear a consensus that the city developmental services doesn't like the option of using an air mittens valve for a toilet.
Okay.
The sink, on the other hand, is something that maybe we could consider, or they could consider. And then I think I hear a consensus from the board that they don't like the idea either without hearing out what other options there may be.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
So obviously we're not saying no, it's just that we're being presented a question without knowing what all the details are, what could be done, things like that. So
Okay.
I guess we are saying no. Sorry.
yeah,
We are saying no to the appeal. Does someone want to make that motion?
On the entire appeal or just that portion of it?
Oh, is there more?
Well, the sink in the kitchen and the island.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I apologize. All I thought we were talking about was the bathroom. So there's also another sink in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay. And it's the exact same situation where you have an island sink and
Yeah.
you want to vent that per the plumbing code with an island vent?
Yes.
I don't know that there's a problem doing.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, I understood that there was.
Yeah, if you install an island vent for an island sink per code, there's no concern.
Okay.
Okay. Gotta have a decent wall to go up and still have to clean up. You know, it's-
Yeah, I think what Summer's talking about is we were wanting to use an auto vent or an air admittance valve in the sink, kitchen sink also.
They're not wanting to do a loop vent for their, so right now you don't have an island sink, you're moving it to an island.
Right.
Correct.
Oh, so.
Yeah, and maybe Summer doesn't, I mean, she might be thinking, you said auto vent or air admittance, but yeah, we're wanting to put an air admittance valve under the island sink in the kitchen.
Is there no way to do the loop vent correctly?
The only way is tearing out plaster again on the exterior wall. And that's the same way with the toilets. I mean, we can do it, but you're going to have to tear out 2 floors of plaster and then get into the crown molding. We were trying to prevent that.
I feel like this is a loaded thing. I feel like I don't have a total problem with the island vent taking
Yeah. The kitchen.
for the kitchen. I just,
If there's,
feel like
if
you're
there's
getting-
access to it, and the biggest thing, for me, an island sink, I think you're fine doing it.
Right.
Is my opinion.
Right.
It is approved, Manhattan IPC.
See, the IPC approves them, yeah.
So, but I don't think it's the best idea for a stool and everything else. So,
I think in the other codes, they're approved for them also. Like toilets, I think the whole house is approved. You just have to have one main vent. It's my understanding, unless I'm been reading it wrong the whole time.
That could be.
Like you can auto vent a whole bathroom, kitchens and everything, as long as you have one main relief vent going out the roof. It's
IPC.
That's IPC.
That's the IPC, I think.
yes.
There's no part of UPC that.
No. Well, I thought for some reason I thought you guys just said they were accepted in another code book. Maybe I misheard that.
they're accepted on an island sink for the IPC, which is what Manhattan and I don't know who else.
Lawrence
does IPC.
And to see if Topeka runs under UPC, so knowing that everything, yeah, we're kind of talking apples and apples, but apples 20 minutes one way and 45 minutes another. They do operate underneath the
Yep.
for a different code.
Yep.
I guess, and I don't have an issue with.
Yeah, I would move to accept it
I would
for
move to
the
accept
island
it.
sink.
For the sink, yeah.
For the kitchen.
Kitchen sink.
What about the bathroom sink?
The bathroom sink, I mean, technically, are you more than, you should be able to do your stool and somehow just be able to take one vent out, use the lab to vent your stool, and just one vent out. But that would be a situation without seeing it, really don't know.
Yeah.
So I think right now, as of right now, it would be the kitchen sink, we would approve, I wouldn't have an
Yep.
issue.
Right.
And-
But as far as the bathroom, without really seeing it and other possible options,
I
I can't.
just feel like I've been around enough of those where I feel like there's sometimes always a way. It just has to deal with burning out, making a chase, but
Yeah.
I can't see it, I can't.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
the air admittance valves, they do work. They
Yes.
work fine on an island, but they do need to be replaced from time to time, like anything else, because you will get, it will start seeping back through. So, but yeah, that's where I would be, is approve the island sink. And then as far as the bathroom, it would be something that we'd have to look into
And then
other options.
also, as long as I'm assuming they're gonna put it underneath the main cavity, I would just, make sure that it's got clear access, it's not buried somewhere where it's,
So it can be accessible.
so it can be accessible and clear.
And it also needs to be an air admittance valve.
Right.
Not one of the
Little black.
quick vents. It
Yeah.
has to be. the right
Okay, do we have a motion on the table from the previous, when we
Yeah.
thought it was just a bathroom? Okay,
Just-
you'll need to withdraw that motion.
Okay.
Whoever.
And then is that something we can meet out there to decide if we can use one on the bathroom, or how does that work?
We've met at other places.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that. We've met at hair salons and stuff
Yeah.
that we've had to deal with stuff, situations.
Can you hear Kyle?
Yeah,
I
whatever
can barely
somebody was saying was like breaking up every other word, but
Okay,
it sounded like you were all right with meeting on the site.
yeah, that was the answer, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
And then-
Doug has withdrawn his previous motion about just the bathroom. Would one of you two, three, summarize all the discussions we had about the kitchen, the bathrooms, and make an appropriate motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the kitchen island sink with the intermittent style auto vent, providing that it has adequate access for repair or replacement. And then not approving the restroom until further analysis on the subject.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. That was 4
Yeah.
ayes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
And I guess you'll set up a time, Summer, or somebody will schedule a time.
Yeah.
I think it'd be best if you get a hold of developmental services, maybe have a plumbing inspector and see who they can round up from one of the plumbers here on the board to meet you out there.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really? Sorry, development services, not developmental.
There's the shot.
All right. All right, next discussion item, unless there's anything else, is about the proposed ordinance for excavation contractors to install site utilities in limited circumstances. Who wants to start?
Yes, I could. When I was going through you guys got when I was going through to get the plumbing code adopted, there was some concern brought up by Councilman Emerson that there was the plumbing contractors had to be on a site where the excavators were doing most of the work. And he felt like that there should be some type of code that would allow the excavators to do certain site utility work, not to do all the plumbing work. Got with, as you know, there were some issues that went around. So we brought up, I listened to what was going on. I brought some points of interest that we could talk about. And I also got with Braxton Copley, who's over utilities, and we talked about trying to see if there were certain jobs that the excavators could do that would not have a negative impact on the plumbers. And so what you have there is the points of interest, the things that we talked about, and then also a draft of a proposed ordinance that we would use to address the issues. The talking points that I brought up for the plumbers, from what I was hearing, the ordinance will only apply to commercial and industrial new installation only new installation. They can't come back and repair, they can't come back and replace, they can only put it in new. The jobs that are designed by licensed engineers, so there would have to be plans on the job. It could be, just if somebody's getting a sewer line repaired or something. And some of those jobs are required to be approved by KDHE. Those are most of the ones that are started the right of way and then go on private property. And it must be an extension of a public or private line. So these are definitely going to be situations where they're going to be setting manholes on properties, not just running pipe. And I don't know about the size of the pipe. That's something we can also discuss. As I noted, we issued 128 permits that were issued thus far this year, and only one project would meet those requirements where the excavator could set the plumbing pipe. And also, they would not be able to do any work on the inside of the building. Then the other point that was brought up by the excavators, the main extension on private property will now be under the responsibility of utilities. Under the regulations, excavators or plumbers can install the mains. So even though the excavators do the work in the right of way, they can also have plumbers do the work in the right of way. So it can be excavators or plumbers. And so these regulations apply on both private and public property. Then the other thing that was brought up was the materials. Sometimes that the materials that they allow to put in the right of way are not the same materials that are allowed on private property because of our code. We resolved that issue, and the city will now be allowed on private property the same materials that are used in the right of way. So those are one of the points of interest.
Only outdoors for the materials, right?
Yes,
okay.
Outdoors. So with that in mind, we drafted up a possible ordinance that would address those issues. And so that's the new TMC 13.10.300. A contractor that installs public water mains may also install private service lines under the following conditions. So the first one is the utilities director or designee has to determine that it's a public or private main that's being extended on a private property. So the utilities director generally, if they're involved in a project, especially a sewer or water line project, it's probably a main extension, and so they will make that decision. The contractor has to comply with all water utility service installation standards, so they have to know what they're doing. The development has to be new, commercial or industrial. Once again, it's only going to be industrial and commercial, and it has to be new. The service line is installed only to the outside of the building, so they will not be able, all the plumbing work on the inside of the building will be done by a licensed plumber. And only a contractor licensed as a plumber pursuant to this shall install connections from the outside of the building, envelope into the building. So all the work still on the inside of the building will be done by plumbers. And that's duplicated down in the sewer lines also. So that's just some discussion points that I presented that we can talk about.
Okay. So I guess I'll start the ball rolling.
Okay.
I'm not a plumber. I'm just a PE that designs stuff here in town and sits on this board. So my first comment is that as we asked back in January of this year when it was first presented, what other jurisdictions allow the same thing? And go ahead.
I checked and this, only other jurisdiction I found that does similar to this is Johnson County. Johnson County has a rural water district, and they have everybody, all the cities in Johnson County are part of this rural water district. And they allow people other than plumbers to install this work. But what their main thing is, they have to follow their standards. So even though they're not plumbers, there are certain standards that they have established. And so that's the only place I found that does that, but it's Johnson County and all the cities.
So the rural water district in Johnson County has a code by which you have to install water and sewer mains.
Right, and you don't have to be a plumber.
But there are no other cities that allow the same thing or something like this.
There are, but it was like a small community. You could go in and just get your license and they let you do the work. So,
Yeah.
I mean, those exist, but, for the most part, I found Kansas City, Missouri, Wyandotte County, and Lawrence. They're like, they do what we presently do.
Yeah, I agree. I did an informal poll as well.
Yeah. So, but the only one that would do something similar to this was in Johnson County.
Okay, well, I'll continue on since I started. I've got a lot of edits to the technical subject of the ordinance if it goes through. Just as an engineer, I'm trying to look at the code every day and the shalls and the shoulds and the ifs and the whats, and I added some text in there, but I guess I'll continue on. So first, commercial industrial new installation only. And there's also a reference to private property. And it kind of says private property sometimes, and then it says commercial industrial other times. I think we need to be really definitive about what it is. And does it include city property, business occupancies, healthcare, and all the other occupancies that are out there? And so then I kind of feel like it's being written for a select group of contractors. And why would we exclude all of the small excavators as well, or those other occupancies? Why wouldn't they, if they can do it for an industrial or commercial job, which I don't know how you define commercial. Is that a strip mall or a small little shop on the side of the street? Why not allow it everywhere if it's okay?
Well, when we say commercial, if you also, you got to add in all of the stuff. You just can't just look at commercial. It says commercial and designed by an engineer. Your little strip mall, they're not going to have 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have a main, extension of a main on a little strip mall. It's just probably going to be your plumbing pipe running to the main in the street. And it's not.
Oh, okay. So maybe I need to understand the definitions, because I did look in here and it says water mains and sewer mains. And it says that extension.
It has to be an extension of a main. And so it's like what brought this up was Walmart. Walmart, they're extending a main, they're setting manholes out on the property, and they're running sewer pipe and they're running water pipe. And that's the type of situation we're talking about. We're not talking about a strip mall where somebody's just going to run a pipe from the building to the main. We're talking about your major projects. And so when we talk about commercial and industrial, that's part of it. And the other part is like and. Commercial and industrial, and it's an extension of the main.
Okay.
And it has to be designed by license. So all of that has to be combined. It can't be separate. You can't just look at one thing. It's and. And the draft that I gave you, the city attorney gave me another draft, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's what I was confused of, because I obviously don't understand what the difference between a water main to a commercial building is versus a water main extension.
Yeah, well, the extension is generally the, I guess I want to say the level of work. I mean, you can run a water line from the street to a house. That's a 3/4 inch, whatever it may be. But when you're running a water line from a main to a distribution center, it's going to be a bigger line. It's going to require more than just a little excavator that your typical plumber would have. So you're going to need an excavator to come out, and it's going to go down deeper. The pipe's going to be bigger, and so the work is a little bit more involved.
It's still the same work, it's just a bigger scale.
Right. Exactly.
So what limits are there? I mean, so if St. Francis or Stormont Bell wanted a new main, is that acceptable for an excavator to do, or does a plumber have to do it? Because that's going to be an 8-inch main, or the fire main is going to be an 8 or a 10.
Well, that's where the director of utilities will come in and make that call. So that's what I'm saying. But in my mind, that would be something that a plumber could do. Because what I'm looking at is the setting of manholes and extending a main. The main is she was talking about public and private. The main is in the right of way. The city puts that main in, and the city maintains that main. Now, the main it extends on the private property, that owner of that property's got to maintain that one. But it's the same type of main on the private property that it is in the right of way. That's the type of situations I'm talking about. When there is a main that you can't distinguish between the city's main and the main on private property, those are the ones I'm talking about. You got manholes. Most commercial projects don't have a manhole set on their property, but research did. What's the Walmart? Yeah, yeah. So it's rare that it happens, but it does happen. So those are the jobs that this is looking at. It's looking at those jobs where we're having manholes set on private property, and the manholes and the piping looks just like the piping that's in the public right of way. So there is a difference between the main in the right of way and the main on private property.
Okay. And I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
As I read this, the first thing I wondered is, okay, and even by your definition, I don't know now what job I specify to be by a plumber or an excavator or both.
I'm not following your question.
If I were designing a building right now,
okay,
and it needed a manhole to get to the city, who's allowed to install that? And if it needs a water service and a fire service, when is it a commercial or industrial building that is an extension of a main versus just a water service or a sewer?
That's when we would have to look at these things and say, it needs this, it's commercial, it's designed by an engineer.
And so that's something that I need to do each project to determine if it's going to be an extension or just a sewer service.
Well, you wouldn't do that. The project, when the project came into the city.
For bidding?
So the director of utilities.
You weren't for bidding, for review.
For your plan.
For a plan review.
But I've got to know what to design before that.
Well, you would call us.
And at the same time, the contractors are bidding it while you guys are doing plan review.
They can call the director of utilities and lay out the project, and he would make that call. So it'd have to be a new project. It'd have to be commercial or industrial.
So I guess I see a lot of holes in it because I like things that are black and white, definitive. Let's say that Frito-Lay is only added on to their facility 600 times and extended water lines and fire lines and sewers that many times. Just the very first project, when they built that plant, it was a new service, and that's the only time the excavator could do it.
Correct.
All these other building additions and extensions, they could not.
Correct,
So it's just new construction.
just new construction.
Just
Of a-
the
of a
first new
facility.
construction on that site.
Yep. New construction and all the other things. I don't want to leave that out. It's a combination of things. It has to hit the check boxes.
Okay. Well, I think there's a lot of detail. And again, I've tried to design the systems and I just need to know what I'm supposed to do. So there's some details we can work through there. I go back to why are we the only other jurisdiction other than Johnson County to consider it? And it seems like we have a system that works pretty well. I know that I've seen on the TV for the last 4 or 5 years that we've had thousands of water main breaks and hundreds of them a year, and we need hundreds of millions of dollars to replace city water mains. And I don't see the same situation on private property. I don't see people's parking lots blowing up with water main breaks, and I don't see people's yards blowing up with water main breaks other than the city water mains that are running the easement. And so it concerns me. I don't know what the utility regulations are. Are there standards, a national model code that is adopted by the utility, or is it just standards they write up?
Trying to address your
Yeah.
first part about there not being water mains breaking on private property.
Uh-huh.
That's because it ain't that many of them. That's my point. That's the whole point. It's more water mains in the street right away, so they're gonna have more breaks. So ones on private properties like your Research, your Marses, your Walmarts, they're not breaking. They're not under that type of pressure that the ones in the street are. They're on private property, so you're not going to see those. So that doesn't. It's kind of mixing apples and oranges, and you're not going to see that on those private projects. And if you do, you're not going to hear about it because they're going to fix it because that's theirs. Now, I'm sorry, what was the other part of that?
I don't know. I just started talking.
And we're sitting here looking at this, and I brought it up
Yeah.
because I was told to.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah, I understand.
So here we are.
Right.
And I did some research, and this is kind of what I found.
Your other question, Jeff, was why are there not any other cities doing it? Why are we doing it? I think that was your other question.
Oh, yeah. So when you did the search and found that there are no other jurisdictions other than Johnson County, that rural water district that allows it, is this tailored based on their
Somewhat.
regulation?
Somewhat.
So,
The only difference is they require the owner of the property, private property, to put it in. And then once the private owner puts it in, they come in and they put it in an easement, and then they make it part of their system. Then they make it part of their public system. So they take it over. That's the only difference with this situation.
So you said 288, but this is 1,288 permits.
Yeah.
And the criteria would only been met in one situation. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, they're probably thinking, well, why can't they just approve it? And I'm wondering, like, why is it such an issue if there's only one that would have fit the criteria this year? Why change something that's been working?
Why change so much for one little thing?
So, and I don't know, do you know what was the situation with the one that would have met the criteria? Like, which project was that?
This is Walmart. Walmart brought this about.
Okay.
And they talked to a council person, and they felt like it was an issue. And so here we are, it's an issue. So.
wish I knew what their issue was, what the, you know,
Well, what
I
happened,
mean, was it,
Walmart had a plumbing contractor out there that couldn't do the work. Our code requires that if there's plumbing work to be done out there, a plumber needs to be out there. But the plumber didn't have the equipment to do the work. So they had a plumber sitting out there, and the excavator was doing the work, and they were paying the plumber. So they were upset because they were paying the plumber to sit there, because our regulations required them to be there, but they couldn't do the work. So that was the issue.
Why couldn't they do the work?
They didn't have the equipment, I guess. I don't know, but
I'm assuming that's
I would,
a backhoe.
Let's circle back around to this text if we could, I guess.
you're fine.
Yeah, so do we have options for public comment here? Is that an ability?
Yeah.
How does someone raise their hand?
Yes.
How does somebody raise their hand if somebody wants to, or do they just need to unmute and talk?
Yeah, does anybody want to comment on this?
Yeah, they should be able to click
there you
and
go.
do it, or if they need to just jump in.
I think Labor's Local 1290 just unmuted.
Yes, sir. My name's Jeff Philby. I'm not sure about the code stuff. I know you're talking about Johnson County. All I know is that which of my contractors tend to do which work and where the plumbers needed. And I know basically all the underground utilities is laborers except for setting valves. This is Kansas City, Wyandotte County, Jackson County. And I don't know the codes. I just know who does the work and whose jurisdiction it is. So I'm curious, and force main is a different story, but if you're talking about like sanitary sewers outside the building or storm sewers outside the building, that's my only concern, is that these are classically and historically laborers, and well, you're calling them excavators, but it's basically laborers working with an excavation company. And I'm just concerned that we're getting into agreed upon jurisdiction that laborers have been doing for 100 years. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm fitting into this, trying to listen to what you guys are talking about. And I'm not sure if I know you're talking about water lines a lot, and we run a lot of mainline water lines. It's plumber's work once it reaches the building. Some of it, once you start talking about utility tapping utility service, is plumber's work. So and again, I don't know what the actual codes are for it. I just know that my contractors do it, and they use laborers to do all of it, except for setting valves or doing work inside the building past the first wire T, I think is what you're calling the building envelope, is where it becomes plumber's work. So I'm a little unclear on exactly where this is going, or what, I'm just trying to shed a little bit of light on, at least up here, and then also in Topeka and areas out there. It tends to be centered around valves or force main, but like gas and all the prime utilities is generally done by laborers before the building's built. You know what I mean? So I know this, get kind of off into the weeds as far as writing a code to cover this, because you know what I mean? You've got to include things and exclude things. And I know y'all's job's way different than mine. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have something put into legislation or into a code that's gonna end up taking something from one of my contractors that has been historically our work. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jeff, can you ask him to say his name again?
Oh, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
I'm Jeff Philgreen. I'm a business agent for Labor's Local 1290.
And I'm Jeff Myers, the field representative, business agent in Topeka.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I pushed the raised hand button, but I don't know what's going on here.
It's
Oh, I
raised,
see it
it's
now.
raised now, go for it.
Okay, hi, I'm Charlie Campbell. I own Topeka Wind Supply. I have a lot of customers that have been very vocal about this exact issue as this hit city council. And my concern with this is raised even more after hearing the explanation of Johnson County. It exemplifies the point I made about this to some of my customers is that no matter who installs it, it has to be installed to code. And the rub with the plumbers is that when they install something, it's done to code and they have to have an inspector look at it. When a utility contractor installs a utility, there's no plumbing inspector. And I understand that there's a list of standards that we're going to abide by, but there's no one checking up on that to ensure that it was done to that standard. Where I heard Johnson County go with this is that they're allowing the excavation contractor to run a main onto the property, but once it's done, they're taking ownership of it. And that's the key with a service line, a service main of any sort, is who takes liability when there's a problem, when something is broken, who's called to go and fix it. So the way I have felt about this in the beginning is, number one, I think it got blown way out of proportion with a lot of plumbers in Topeka because they felt they were getting their toes stepped on, and I don't blame them. I don't have a dog in the fight other than I have a lot of customers that are continually asking me if I'm going to get involved or say anything to the city about this. I do hold a master plumbing license in the city, and it was a lot of work to get that license. And I feel like if we're going to allow anyone to run a service line, comma, that is going to be end result owned by the property owner, that should be done under a specific statute code with a license and inspected. Now, I know in the city council, there was some discussion about issuing licenses for excavators. And, you know, I guess I understand if the city wants to hire a excavator to install a main and the city's going to run their truck out and maintain it, that's one thing. But if someone that is unlicensed, unsupervised is going to run a private main, and we're going to turn the ownership of that private main over to the end user, I guess I struggle to understand how it's fair that it's okay to do that without an inspection, but a plumber can't go replace more than 4 feet of that same pipe without an inspection and a permit and a license and CEUs. So the list goes on and on of the requirements that plumbers are required to meet in order to do smaller work. And earlier I heard the comment about force mains are different, and they are. Force mains are more forgiving. Water mains are pretty forgiving, but a sewer has to be self-cleaning. It has to be graded correctly. It has to be bedded correctly and backfilled correctly. So there's a lot to that we're turning over to an end user. And I guess my point on it is it's exemplified with what we just heard about. We have a list here from Johnson County of how they do things. The only difference is we're not going to maintain ownership of it as a city. We're going to turn that ownership back over to the end user. So that's my 2 cents.
Very good points, Charlie. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
So, Charlie, if you would, when you have to bid one of these jobs that come out, how are you going to know which materials to bid to the contractors on bid day?
That's an interesting point. And most of the time it comes from your set of plans.
Okay.
So I agree 100%. And I meant to mention that you're going to need to understand this really well because you're drawing the plans that the contractors are all bidding this off of. What we're struggling with, what the contractor's going to struggle with is he's now bidding a licensed and a permit technician against someone that doesn't have to have a license, and the same job can be executed by both parties.
Thank you. I appreciate your point a whole lot about who owns the main. And I agree, if it's in the street or on private property that the city has agreed to maintain, that's one thing. But if an owner believes that they are receiving for their dollar a project that was designed per a national model code, then that's another.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else, public-wise, have any comments, thoughts? So educate me, someone. What's the difference? This is titled water main. What's the difference between a water main, a service line, a private service line, or a public service main? All the same text that's used in here. Are they? What is the difference between a sewer leaving my house, this building, and going to a city main? What is that called? A building drain, right?
It's a sewer line. It's just a regular, it's just a sewer line.
And what
Going
is
from the
a,
building going to the main, that's the sewer line.
okay.
And the sewer line.
Can I
sewer
on
main.
that?
Hey, I don't know the utility lingo about the difference in a service main versus a water main versus a public main versus a private main. I don't understand what those terms are, so I'm lost.
Well, public main, public water main,
Yes.
that's the main that's in the right of way.
Okay.
That's the public right of way. Okay, a private water, a service line comes off of that public water main and runs to the house. That's the service line. It's serving that house.
The service main, the service line, and the private main are all the same thing.
No, you gotta say it again.
The private main, the service main, and the service pipe are all, I'm just looking at the text here, they're all the same thing.
They're similar. I mean, you get to the size. If you talk about a service main, you're not talking about a service line. The service main is gonna be bigger than a service line. The line is just the line running to the house. And that's where I was talking about the major projects. You're gonna have a water service main running onto Walmart, but you're just gonna have a service line running to a house.
So
because of the size of the line.
a 4-inch fire main coming into almost any commercial building for a sprinkler system, what is that?
What would you guys call it?
See, that's my question. We
To
don't
me,
have.
it's the same, whether it's a 1-inch line or 6-inch
I
line,
agree.
8-inch line.
Okay,
I agree. It's a water service.
It's a
to
water
the-
service that is feeding the building.
okay.
So that's the biggest problem I have is that it's not definitive on who owns it and what exactly size it is, because I just did a building out west of town that has a manhole on the sewer.
Ownership,
Yep.
ownership is at the property line. There's no doubt about ownership.
Okay.
Ownership, once you get out of the right of way, that's that private, and that's in our code. Once that line gets off the right of way, that line belongs to the property owner. There's no, that's clear. It's just either it's in the right of way or it's on private property. And that's where this issue's about. It's either right of way or private property.
But also, I guess you've said that it's the intent from the people who've asked you to write it was just big services for like Walmart or Reese's, not anything else.
Right, the commercial projects, and I'm saying that's when, yeah, you're extending the main, which is the main source of the sewer line or water line. It's the main source. And you have water lines that are run on those projects, and then you have the sewer lines that are run on those projects.
Okay, so anybody else have a comment, thought, suggestion?
We had a chat from somebody.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
okay.
just went live.
Oh. Oh. Dave Schmidtline couldn't communicate back through the Zoom, so he has offered to meet with me, and he left the Zoom. Okay.
And then looks like Charlie is bringing it in.
Oh, Charlie, go ahead.
I don't know. Somebody wound my spring tighter than I guess I let unfold here a little bit ago. So I've been in this industry an awful long time. I retired from the contractor aspect, and I'm simply a wholesaler today. However, I can tell you over 30 years, I worked in the Topeka community as a contractor, and I've been through a ton of fights, and I've actually served as expert witness in court on things like you mentioned. As soon as I was done, you asked about technical terminology. And I can tell you, on a residential sewer, there's the building drain that goes just a few feet outside the property. Then there's the actual sewer pipe that connects to the building drain and goes to the riser. And then you have the riser, which takes the sewer to the depth of the main. And then you have the Y, and then you have the main. And the Y is owned by the city of Topeka. But if the Y has a problem, the homeowner is responsible for excavation. The riser, the sewer, and the building drain are all owned by the end user. I have seen residential applications where that residential sewer comes out the front yard, goes down the driveway, across the street to the other side of the street, turns, goes past 3 houses before it actually connects to a main. So when we talk about getting onto private property, that's a one-off scenario of the project that brought all of this to fruition. The biggest problem with fast decisions that I have with these type things goes back years when we, in the backflow ordinance, which I have my backflow certification as well, guess can't show you that, we allow a double check valve to currently serve where the hazard is not met with a double check valve. And that was because something was brought up at a council meeting and we quickly allowed something like this. These kind of decisions need to be analyzed. And the main thing I wanted to say is I appreciate you as a board dissecting this and getting ultimately to the bottom of it so that we know it's not just pushed through in a hurry. So thank you for the time you're going to spend on this.
Thank you. So any other public comments, thoughts? You guys have any thoughts here in the room?
I've got one more on as far as the every bit of our work that gets turned in has to be inspected, that it's to plan and that it passes pressure testing. So it gets inspected before it gets buried. And so I don't know exactly what the other part was about. As far as labor is doing, where our work gets inspected, it has to pass according to plan and according to pressure testing.
Hey, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, Steve. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, I don't have any video. I had to grab a computer real quick. I've been listening to, I'm Steve Brown with Piping Contractors of Kansas, local mechanical contractor. I kind of was sat on the side when this first went through city council. Looked like there was plenty of mechanicals and plumbers up in arms about it. I'm a little confused that it come back around. We've been doing.
Steve?
Yeah, can you hear me?
No,
No.
we can't.
Okay,
We can hear that you're saying something. That's about it.
all right, let me check the mic here. Is that any better? No.
Not much.
Okay. Well, I was just, tell me if you can hear me at all. If not, I'll just have to get with you on the sidebar.
No, we can hear you a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, basically, my stance is on the first go around with the city council, I kind of sat on the side. There seemed to be plenty of people up in arms about this being slid through. In reading the new proposal, I don't really see what problem we're solving by making a new code. I've also been doing this for 35 years. We did the original Walmart, 2 Walmarts in town, Frito-Lay, Hill's Pet. I mean, we do a lot of industrial jobs, and we work hand in hand with the excavators. Most of the time, the majority of the time, the work is in our contract, and we work with the excavation contractors to do part of it. And I don't see what the problem was. If there's one instance on the new Walmart building, I don't understand throwing out a code that's been working for 50 years and trying to massage it into something that it's not and creating more problems. I have no problem with working with the laborers on this stuff. We do it all the time. Like I said, I just don't see we're opening a can of worms that's going to take 20 years to find out all the conflicts and problems.
Thank you. So where do we go from here?
Well,
And let me interrupt before you start. I apologize that it sounds like I'm beating you up.
no.
Okay.
That's
I know.
exactly, just what, where we at, what Charlie said. Charlie said, we gotta dissect this thing.
Yeah.
And we gotta see, and the only way you can dissect it, sometimes you gotta tear it apart.
Well, I know
You know?
that you're getting,
So-
you have people above you asking you to do something, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And I sat down in an hour and read it and came up with 2 pages of red lines because I thought this meant any water service. I didn't know it was over some size. I thought it meant any sewer service.
No.
The way I rated it, so does it mean fire services, lawn irrigation, forced mains, grease interceptors, any of those things that are outside the building on the sewer?
No, it's gotta, like I said, it's gotta be and. It's gotta meet all the ands. All of those standards.
Okay.
Up front, it's gotta meet 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's gotta meet those, and then it applies.
Right.
Right now, I'm just gonna go back, and what I'm hearing is, most of what I'm hearing is not that big of an issue. Okay, we got, as you mentioned, we issued 1,200 plumbing permits, and only one of them meets this. I'm hearing plumbers say that they work with excavators on these jobs. One thing I did hear is that I didn't have in here, which I would add, is that it needs to be inspected. I just said it meets the standards. I didn't say it had to be inspected, so it would have to be inspected. So right now, what I want to do is take back what I got from this meeting.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
That's fine.
I guess I still don't, I'm not okay with the stance of us just creating like a different double standard with, or allowing, there was a talk about creating a different standard for them to hold.
Right.
And that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
I mean, if we ride by UPC, all UPC standards say that it has to be licensed plumbers doing the work, it's gonna be inspected, we're held to a certain standard. To do that, if an excavation contractor, I think, wants to do that work, they should be held to the same standard that McRoy's, PCI, P1, Carlson, anybody's held to, where they're gonna have to carry, I don't know why, if you're gonna do the work the same as anybody else, you should carry a master, you should have licensed installers. They should be inspected the same as everybody else.
That's my fear, is there's too much gray area.
There's way too
And
much gray area.
then that little bit of gray area, all of a sudden you get, and it gets expanded out, and then you don't know where it's gonna end up. And we have a process that works, to my knowledge,
So
right
just,
now in place. And I don't know, now if there was a special circumstance, like you said, there's 1 out of 1,200, if there was a huge issue with the building where it was easier for them to do this or do that, you know, have a meeting over that. I don't know if you could look at it job by job instead of putting it out there for everybody.
Yeah, the blanket.
Let's just take that one job that possibly would have gone through and then look at it case by case.
You know, but coming from commercial and industrial myself, anytime there's special circumstances like that, that's when you reach out for a joint venture. You know, if you've got something major, kind of like you explained, there was an issue with whoever it was, they kind of had to do a bit of a joint venture, but somebody is still accountable for that. And to me, that was the licensed plumber who was out there, whether they liked it or not, the excavating, having to pay them to do that. That's an accountability that we live through because of the licenses we hold and the standards we're held to.
Well, it's more basically what Mr. Brown said.
Yeah.
You know, he's worked with the laborers and the
Yeah, but I don't have a problem
excavators.
don't have a problem working.
You know, because he would probably, you know, sub some of that stuff out, you know,
Absolutely.
to them, you know. So, or any big contractor would possibly do that. So I don't think we have a problem working with the laborers and the excavating companies and stuff like that. Because a lot of times they do get that work, you know, the bigger, the outside stuff. But I don't feel like they should be able to just do our work, you know.
And not be held to the same standard.
Right.
so, I started this off asking, does anybody else do the same thing? And you mentioned that Johnson County has a written building regulation that allows something similar. And I think Charlie said that that only applies when the rural water district actually owns the main, and that's something we can check. Instead of us starting from scratch and writing a new code, would it be acceptable for the city to take Johnson County's and consider it?
300-page document that would have to be gone through, and I don't know who's going to go through that.
Well, the only reason I say Johnson County is because I know they have a lot more attorneys than we do.
Yeah, that's probably why the document's 300
Yeah,
pages long.
And that's what scares me. Theirs is 300 pages long and ours is a page. And that concerns me how many gray areas and holes there are. Even with the International Building Code, International Fire Code, Uniform Mechanical Code, Uniform Plumbing Code, the NFPA 70 that we adopt as a city for our model building codes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we meet to work through those gray areas. I'm just afraid we're going to be meeting every month on multiple questions if we don't have it definitive.
Yeah, this was just a discussion. I mean,
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is just,
Has anybody reached out to Local 8 in Kansas City to get some of their stance on where this is? I'd be curious to know, you know, obviously 441, this is our jurisdiction here.
Right.
But, you know, if Johnson County, you know, those jurisdictions do that, I'd be curious to know where Local 8's, you know, plumber stance is on all of that and why it is the way it is, understanding a little bit more about it.
well, and I said they didn't require it to be licensed plumbers. I didn't say there weren't licensed plumbers doing the work. See, that's what I don't know.
Yeah.
They just said.
And
they
that's
don't
why I
require
was curious, that there's just a lot of, tons of what.
A lot of gray.
That's fine. I mean, this was just a discussion. And that's what I was trying to get some input and some direction on what, which is we're kind of back where we were to me a year ago.
Right.
You know, it's not all that clear. So, But I got some good information. I'm gonna take this back and we'll probably, I'll discuss it with the city manager, my boss, and Braxton Copley, and the city attorney, and see what they say, and where we can go from here.
So for everybody that can't see the chat, Charlie added, it can be simple, leave it like it was or is, and bring those very rare exceptions to the city plumbing board, he said, to the plumbing board for review. I guess that is an option.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's an option.
case by case.
Yes.
Yep.
Trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's kind of what we do already.
Yeah.
I mean, we operate by a code. It's basically black and white. Anything that deviates from that,
It's brought to us.
it's brought to us. We discuss it. We make an executive decision to make the best plan of attack for it. I don't think that completely changing the way we do things and really, to me, saying that a plumbing license means nothing is the answer. I don't think that that's the answer at all. I think that we're asking to change a lot.
So,
Anything else, guys?
I'm good.
Public, do you guys have anything else?
Appreciate your input.
Okay. So if we're done, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All in favor? Thank you all.